There is something almost confusing that happens after a breakup or distance. You stop talking to him. You stop texting. You stop checking on him. And at first, nothing happens. No apology, no message, no explanation, just silence. But then something strange starts to happen. He comes back. Sometimes after days, sometimes after weeks, sometimes after months. And when he returns, it feels like nothing ever happened. Like he didn't just walk away from you. Like he didn't leave you in confusion. Like he didn't go silent first. And that is where the real question begins. Not, why did he leave? But, why do men come back after no contact? Because the truth is, most men don't return for the reason you think. And if you misunderstand this, you will fall into the same emotional cycle again and again. So in this video, we are going to slow everything down. No fancy words, no complicated psychology, just real human behavior. And by the end, you will understand something most people never explain clearly. A man doesn't always return because he suddenly realized your worth. Sometimes, it's because silence changed how his mind processes you. Let's start from the moment you stop talking. No contact is not just ignoring someone. It is something deeper than that. Because when communication stops completely, the mind does something very specific. It starts filling in the gaps. At first, a man feels relief. Yes, relief. Not sadness, not regret. Relief that there's no more pressure, no more emotional responsibility, no more conversations he was avoiding. He tells himself things like, I needed space. This is better for now. I can focus on myself. And for a short time, he believes it. Because silence feels peaceful at the beginning. But here is what most people don't understand. Silence has two stages. The first stage is relief. The second stage is realization. And between those two stages, something begins to shift quietly in his mind. When you remove yourself completely, his brain no longer gets emotional updates about you. No arguments, no affection, no attention, no access to you. So his mind starts doing something natural. It starts replaying memories. But not all at once. At first he remembers neutral things, then small moments, then emotional moments he ignored before. And here's the important part. He does not remember the relationship as it was. He remembers how it felt when it was gone. That difference is everything, because absence changes emotional weight. What felt normal before now feels like something missing. But at this stage, he will not admit it. Instead, he distracts himself. He tells himself, I'm fine. It wasn't that serious. I can move on. But the mind doesn't forget emotional attachment just because someone decides to ignore it. It stores it, quietly. Most men don't come back immediately. There is always a delay. Because the return is not emotional at first. It is mental. He starts noticing. He checks your profile without meaning to. He remembers random conversations. He feels small moments of curiosity. He compares new experiences to old ones. But he still doesn't reach out. Because pride is still active. So what you see on the outside is silence. But what is happening inside is processing. And that processing stage is where the return is being built. Not when he messages you, not when he likes your post, but in the silence where nothing seems to be happening. Here is something very important. If a man loses you and you keep chasing him, his mind stays stable. He knows you are still there. He knows access is not gone. He does not feel loss. But when you stop contacting him completely, something different happens. His brain can no longer predict your availability. And human psychology reacts strongly to uncertainty. Because uncertainty creates curiosity, and curiosity creates mental return. Even if he is not emotionally ready, his mind will still go back to you occasionally. Not because he misses you fully yet, but because the story is unfinished. So now you understand the beginning of the process. Silence does not make a man forget you. Silence makes him start processing you differently. And in the next part, we are going to go deeper into something even more important. Why he feels relief at first, but later starts feeling something completely different that he cannot explain easily. Because that is where the real turning point begins. Now we arrive at the phase most people never talk about, because this is the phase where many women become confused. They think, if he misses me, why hasn't he reached out? If he still cares, why is he acting fine? If no contact works, why does it look like he's happier without me? The answer lies in something very powerful, something that controls many decisions people make. Ego. Not arrogance, not selfishness, just ego. The part of a person that wants to feel in control. And after no contact begins, a man's ego often becomes very active. When a relationship ends or communication stops, many men experience something that feels like freedom. Suddenly, there are no expectations, no emotional conversations, no accountability, no need to explain where they are or what they are feeling. At first, this can feel exciting. They have more time, more space, more independence. And because of that, they often convince themselves they made the right decision, not because they have carefully examined their emotions, but because freedom feels good in the beginning. Think about it. When someone carries a heavy backpack all day and finally takes it off, they immediately feel lighter. That doesn't mean the backpack wasn't valuable. It only means they notice the relief of setting it down. Relationships can work the same way. Even healthy relationships require effort, and when effort disappears, relief often arrives before reflection. That is why many men appear perfectly fine during the early stages of no contact. They are focused on the immediate feeling of freedom, not on the long-term reality of loss. This is where many people panic. They see him posting online, going out with friends, laughing, living his life. And they think, he never cared. He's already over me. I meant nothing. But appearances rarely tell the whole story. People often display their strongest emotions publicly and process their deepest emotions privately. A smile on social media is not proof that someone has completely moved on. A night out is not proof that someone feels nothing. And silence is not proof of indifference. Many emotions take time to surface, especially for people who are used to suppressing them. One reason men often seem fine after no contact is because they become busy. Very busy. Work, friends, sports, hobbies, travel, entertainment, anything that keeps the mind occupied. And for a while it works. Distraction creates distance from emotional discomfort. But distraction has a weakness. It only works while you're distracted. Eventually the day ends, the room becomes quiet, the conversations stop, the phone is put away, and that is when thoughts begin to appear. Thoughts that were hidden by activity, thoughts that were delayed by constant movement, thoughts that are impossible to outrun forever. This is often the moment when curiosity starts growing. Not necessarily regret. Not yet. Curiosity. Questions begin appearing. What is she doing now? Has she moved on? Is she talking to someone else? Does she still think about me? Why hasn't she reached out? And something interesting happens here. The more complete your silence is, the fewer answers he has. The fewer answers he has, the more curiosity grows, because people naturally want closure. They want certainty. They want predictable outcomes. When certainty disappears, the mind starts searching. Many men secretly expect contact, not because they are bad people, but because they are human. They assume she'll text eventually, she'll check in, she'll reach out, she'll break the silence. And when days turn into weeks without that happening, something shifts. The expected message never arrives. The expected apology never appears. The expected pursuit never happens. And suddenly he realizes something important. You may actually be moving forward. That realization can be surprisingly powerful, because as long as someone believes they have access to you, they rarely think deeply about losing you. It is when access becomes uncertain that value becomes clearer. Many people misunderstand no contact. They think it is a strategy to force someone back. But healthy no contact is not about manipulation. It is about creating space. Space for healing, space for clarity, space for both people to see reality without constant emotional interference. Ironically, when someone genuinely starts focusing on their own life, they often become more attractive. Not because they are playing games, but because confidence naturally grows when your happiness is no longer dependent on someone else's actions. And that change is often noticeable. Now another shift begins. The mind starts reviewing memories differently. Earlier, he focused on freedom. Now he starts remembering connection, the late-night conversations, the inside jokes, the routines, the comfort, the small details. Things that seemed ordinary while they existed suddenly become meaningful after they are gone. This is one of the strangest parts of human psychology. We often recognize value most clearly in absence, not because absence creates value, but because absence reveals it. There's something important to understand. The brain often softens negative memories faster than positive ones. Over time, many frustrations fade. Arguments lose intensity. Annoyances become smaller, and positive moments become easier to remember. That doesn't mean the relationship was perfect. It simply means memory edits experience. The emotional edges become smoother. And this creates a dangerous question in his mind. Was it really as bad as I thought? That question is often the beginning of a return, because once someone starts questioning their decision, they begin re-examining the entire relationship. At first, ego says, I'm fine. I made the right choice. I'm moving forward. But eventually, reality starts competing with the story ego created, because reality asks different questions. Do I actually miss her? Why am I thinking about her? Why do certain memories keep returning? Why am I checking her profile? Why do I feel disappointed when I don't see updates? Why do I keep wondering what she's doing? And every one of those questions weakens certainty. The stronger the curiosity becomes, the harder it is for ego to maintain control. This creates an internal conflict. One side says, leave it alone. You made your choice. Keep moving forward. The other side says, maybe I should reach out. Maybe I miss her. Maybe things weren't as simple as I thought. And for many men, this battle can continue for weeks or even months, because reaching out feels risky. It requires vulnerability. It requires admitting uncertainty. It requires opening a door that was closed. That is why many men think about contacting someone long before they actually do it. The decision often takes much longer than people realize. But the most powerful phase hasn't happened yet, because in the next chapter, something even deeper begins. A phase where memories stop being occasional and start becoming emotional. A phase where he begins comparing the present to the past, and where he suddenly realizes something he never expected. Not all connections are easy to replace, and that realization changes everything. In the next part, we'll explore the memory trigger phase, the moment he starts missing what he thought he could easily leave behind. There comes a point in no contact where something changes inside him. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is very quiet, but it is powerful. Because suddenly, memories start coming back. Not randomly, not once in a while, but in moments, triggered moments. And when that begins, everything he thought he was sure about starts to feel a little less certain. This is the memory trigger phase, and this is where missing you begins, not as a decision, but as a feeling that shows up without permission. At the beginning of no contact, a man is focused on freedom. Then he moves into distraction, then ego. But eventually the brain does something natural. It starts reconnecting emotional dots. And the strange thing is, memories don't return in order. They return in feelings. A song plays. A place is visited. A random time of day feels familiar. A certain silence feels different. And suddenly he remembers you. Not the breakup, not the arguments, but the moments that carried emotion. A memory trigger is anything that connects the present moment to the past emotionally. It can be small, very small, a street you walked together, a restaurant you used to talk about, a certain type of weather, a time of night you usually texted, even a smell or sound. And what makes it powerful is not the trigger itself. It is what the brain attaches to it. Because the brain doesn't just store facts, it stores feelings tied to experiences. So when something reminds him of you, he doesn't just remember what happened, he remembers how it felt. This is important. He didn't feel this strongly before, not because the memories didn't exist, but because they were covered by distraction and ego. When someone is still emotionally in motion, their brain is focused on present activity. But when things become quiet, the mind starts reaching backward. And the quieter his life becomes, the louder those memories feel. Something interesting also happens here. His mind starts filtering memories. Not everything comes back equally. At first, neutral memories appear, then positive ones, then emotional ones. And slowly, the brain begins to soften the negative parts of the past. Arguments start feeling less intense. Disagreements feel less important. Distance makes emotional pain fade, but connection stays. And this creates a distorted question in his mind. What if it wasn't that bad? That question is very important, because it shifts focus away from escape and toward reconsideration. Most emotional memory triggers happen at night. Why? Because distraction disappears. The world becomes quiet. No conversations, no work pressure, no noise, just thoughts. And in that quiet space, the mind starts replaying emotional connections more clearly. He remembers laughter. He remembers comfort. He remembers the feeling of being understood. And even if he doesn't admit it out loud, something changes internally. The emotional weight of those memories increases. At this stage, something subtle begins. Comparison. Not intentional, not planned. It just happens. He meets new people, or talks to others, or observes different interactions. And without meaning to, his mind starts comparing. Not everything, just feelings. This conversation feels different. She used to understand me better. This doesn't feel as natural. Something is missing. And that something is not always easy to name. But the mind notices it, even when the person doesn't want to. This is where many misunderstand the situation. Just because he is remembering you does not mean he will immediately reach out. Memory is not action. Memory is awareness. At this stage, he is simply reconnecting emotionally with the past. But pride is still there. Fear is still there. Uncertainty is still there. So he observes silently. He thinks, he feels, but he doesn't act yet. But something important is happening under the surface. The emotional resistance is weakening. Because every memory reduces certainty that moving on was simple. Every emotional recall adds weight to what was lost. And slowly, the mind begins to ask, why am I still thinking about her? That question is the beginning of emotional return. Not the action, but the shift. No contact does something interesting. It removes new experiences. So the brain has less current emotional input. And when that happens, older emotional experiences become more dominant. It is not that the past becomes stronger. It is that the present becomes quieter. So the past fills the space. And when the past is filled with emotional connection, it becomes very noticeable. In this phase, there is usually a moment, a small moment. He opens your chat, he types something, he deletes it, he scrolls your profile, he stops, he thinks, he hesitates, and then he closes the phone. Not because he doesn't care, but because reaching out means reopening emotion, and that requires courage. So instead of action, he chooses silence again. But the thought has already formed, and once a thought forms, it does not disappear easily. Now, the process is deeper. It is no longer just ego. It is no longer just distraction. It is memory turning into emotional awareness. But something even more powerful is coming next. Because once memory becomes strong enough, comparison begins. And when comparison begins, emotional discomfort follows. In the next part, we will explore the comparison phase, why other people start feeling different, and why he begins to question what he thought he wanted. By now, something has changed. The silence is no longer just silence. The memories are no longer occasional. And the confidence he once had about moving on is no longer as strong. But now he enters a phase that catches many people by surprise. The comparison phase. This is where reality starts replacing fantasy. Because when someone leaves a relationship, they often imagine what life will look like afterward. They imagine more freedom, more excitement, more possibilities, maybe even someone better. But imagination and reality are not the same thing. And eventually, reality shows up.